Welcome to the Awesemo Early Bird Podcast. It's your old pal EMAC coming to you with the solo show as we cover the 7 games on the Saturday early slate. These are going to start at 1 o'clock and they're going to go through 4. And then we, of course, have a nice, robust main slate beginning at 7 o'clock. So we have you covered in all aspects. This, of course, is your foundational podcast with the first look before we have the lineups, but we're making our best guesses, assuming nobody gets dinged up on Friday night, as this is when we are recording. Not to fear, you've got the MLB the MLB strategy show with myself and, of course, featuring Jake Hari, who is filling in for Adam Scherer, who is down there in Miami. We've got that going off about 11:15, and we will go game by game through the entire slate. And then at 6 o'clock, you will have Live Before Lock MLB. That will be myself and Chris Spags, and we will have all of the lineups, and we will be going through the main slate at a leisurely pace, and we should have time for questions. But in the meantime, let's jump on in here because, boy, do we have a lot to talk about. The first game that we're going to have is Baltimore at Boston. Now, we don't have any weather that we need to be concerned about, at least from a precipitation standpoint on the early slate. There is some potential rain in Texas, but that game is not until 8 o'clock Eastern on Saturday night, so we will know more as we get closer to that one. We have Andrew Kashner checking in at 4,500 on DraftKings, going against Rick Porcello. Now, this one should be a little bit interesting. You have Andrew Kashner, who does not get blown up as often as most of us think, and we have pointed this out time and time again, but this is the Boston Red Sox he's going against in Fenway, and we've got a 60-degree first pitch temperature with a nice breeze blowing out to center between 7 and 9 miles an hour. So looking at Kashner, we, of course, will want to pick some hitters against him. It's going to be the main guys on Boston, which seems to be a veritable all-star team at this point. But checking in over the last 2 seasons, you have J.D. Martinez with his 1,000 OPS and his 320 ISO. You've got Mookie Betts, who has a 890 OPS with a 230 ISO. And then Andrew Benintendi, we love him in lefty-righty matchups. He's got an 840 OPS with a 180 ISO. The nice thing about him is he does have that 120 WRC plus, which is weighted runs created plus. Now, that is an advanced metric that neutralizes ballpark factors and creates a league-wide baseline of 100. So what this means is a 121 is indicating that Benintendi creates, either by himself or for others, 20% more runs than the average hitter in similar situations. So that's something you want to take into account. You also have Xander Bogaerts, Mitch Moreland, Rafael Devers, and then whomever is the backstop will be someone who is in contention there, going against Andrew Kashner as we have a, wait for it, non-Coors Field 6.5 implied run total. Now, that Baltimore game is going on right now. Let's dip on over to live scoring and see what is happening there because that is just a run total like we are not expecting to see. So they're through 5 right now. Boston has 3 runs. Benintendi hit his first home run of the season off David Hess, and it looks like the Red Sox will be solidly in control. The other thing we want to keep in mind is the Baltimore Orioles bullpen has essentially been under siege the beginning of this season. They're sort of doing openers every 3rd or 4th day, and then you've got starters like Kashner and David Hess, and of Dylan Bundy, who gave up 4 home runs on Thursday and led the league with 41 home runs last year. So this is the gift that keeps on giving. Definitely give some strong consideration here to the Red Sox. That should be no surprise. On the other side, we have the batters of Birdland, as I like to refer to them. That would be the Baltimore Orioles. They're going to be going against Rick Porcello, who has been a whole lot of meh in his first 2 games. He has managed to last 7 1/3 innings. In that time, he has allowed a wildly robust 23 base runners, 16 runs allowed. Now, to be fair, 5 of those in his first game against the vaunted Seattle offense, who nobody thought we would be saying that. They scored 9, only 5 were earned. But the 7 walks is highly concerning, and to offset that, he has managed a strikeout per inning. So he has 8 strikeouts in that 7 1/3. So Porcello has not been great, but the Boston Red Sox do have a relatively decent bullpen. So even if he's only managing to scuffle, 4 or 5 innings, I don't really know who's going to get to him. Trey Mancini and Jonathan Villar are the 2, air quote, best hitters here for Baltimore, but you also have some discounted options depending on the site you are playing with Renato Nunez, Dwight Smith. You have Cedric Mullins, who comes into the picture. And then, hey, is Chris Davis going to be in the lineup? I don't know, but he has been severely discounted on most sites. Through this evening's game, he is not in the lineup. He did play yesterday. His hitless streak extending back into last season is up to 53 at-bats. Not good times for him. Our next 1 o'clock game is the Chicago White Sox continuing their battle with the New York Yankees. Now, this one's a little bit intriguing. You have Ivan Nova, who is going into his former stomping grounds, taking on the Yankees, who just had to place Sanchez on the DL today. So, yes, for those of you scoring at home, that is Andujar, Sanchez, and Stanton are all on the DL. So this vaunted New York lineup looking a little bit weaker than normal, but Nova is not really someone we can trust these days. He has, he's been around for about a decade now, and his skill set is just declining, which should not be a big surprise. He has made 2 appearances thus far this season, managed to go 7 innings with just 1 earned run allowed in Cleveland for his start on April 1st. And then in his next game against Seattle, he managed just 2 1/3 inning, gave up 7 earned runs on 7 hits. He hasn't given up a home run yet, but in his 9 1/3 innings, he just has 6 strikeouts. So not a lot of scariness there for Nova. If we look at some of his stats over the last 2 seasons, or shall we say dating back to the beginning of 2017, so we can include the 2 games he has this year, he has just a 12.1% strikeout rate over his last 721 lefties faced. Yikes, that is not doing him any favors. And then against righties, it ticks up a little bit, but it's just 21%. He still doesn't offer up a ton of walks in that time frame, but the issue is he allows a lot of balls in play. So that can be a little bit tricky. So if we're going to the Yankees here, let's call up their stats. We have the usual guys who are still healthy, which would be Aaron Judge, Gleyber Torres. We can throw Brett Gardner in there, and then it gets a little dicey. Do you want to look to Clint Frazier, Luke Voigt, Greg Bird, etc.? Those guys are going to likely have some prominent spots in the lineup, and this is a good situation for them. Going for the Yankees, wait for it, you may remember, it is CC Sabathia. He will be making his first start of the season. He was originally slated to go on Sunday, but they moved down Jonathan Losiga to the minors. So that means Sabathia is going to take the pill and head to the mound here. We know that he is a shadow of his former self and just not the guy that we are used to, the Cy Young candidate, the playoff, stellar playoff pitcher, etc. So that becomes a spot where we can potentially target some of the White Sox. Now, they have a few guys that can't hit lefties worth a darn, but they do have Jose Abreu, who over his last 290 plate appearances against lefties has a 260 isolated power and a nearly 400 WOBA. So he is clearly the cream of the crop. Wellington Castillo did not start on Friday night. He will probably be in the cleanup spot and is relatively discounted both on DraftKings and Yahoo. Shout out to Yahoo, who is now sponsoring the Early Bird podcast. You can still use the promo code AWESOMO on any first deposit that you make in their DFS section and get a $30 match in Yahoo player points, which are available for immediate use. Tim Anderson should be batting second, once again, going against a lefty. And outside of those guys, there's really nobody to get overly excited about. It is the White Sox, but they are a little limited, shall we say. Continuing on to our third game of the 7, we have the Detroit Tigers and the Minnesota Twins. Now, this game was postponed because of snow on Friday, and they postponed that Thursday night. We're looking at a first pitch temperature of 38 degrees. As long as no more snow comes into the area, they should be able to have the field cleared, etc. But that seems relatively miserable. We've got Tyson Ross at 6,700 on DraftKings going against Michael Pineda. We have Pineda looking at the Tigers, who have just a 3.3 implied run total, which is very, very low. Now, the one thing we do want to be careful with on Pineda is we know that they have been treating him with kid gloves, especially when it's been poor weather. So in his first start at home, he managed just 80 pitches. Again, that was in the upper 30s, low 40s. He then went to Philadelphia for his next start, threw 80 pitches, so we know he should be relatively stretched out, but he's been dealing with a myriad of injuries. So what you'll want to make sure is if we get any indication of if they're going to treat him very, very carefully or just carefully. But I would suspect he's probably going to be somewhere in the 55 to 65 pitch range. And that at 7,800 on DK could be enough to put him in the mix against this Tigers team. So let me get over to my filters here and let's see how the Motor City Kitties have been faring against righties. We have, of course, Nicholas Castellano is their leader, but he is carrying the day-to-day tag. So let's see our news on that. Sprained right big toe. So he has had, with the postponement, he has had some time off. He last played on the 10th. Of course, Saturday, that is the 13th. So there's a good chance he will be in the lineup. But it's going to be cold. And I can only imagine if he somehow manages to foul a pitch off his foot, which always seems to happen when people have a foot or ankle injury. It's like the ball knows. So just be aware that he could be a late scratch. We may get word that he's not even in the lineup, but he is sitting in the projected lineup on Friday night. He has been outstanding in matchups against righties with a 200 ISO and a 110 runs created plus, 32 home runs in his last 1,100 plate appearances there. Christian Stewart gets the lefty-righty matchup. He is someone that's gone a little underlooked. He's been batting somewhere between 6th and 7th in most of his games. He's got a 220 ISO over his last 100 at-bats against against righties. He is a lefty. And then you've got Nico Goodrum, potentially Miguel Cabrera in the mix, Heimer Candelario, etc. So you could cobble together a decent 2 or 3 guys from this matchup. Just know that it's cold and not going to be really fun for anybody. On the other side, we have Tyson Ross, who somehow put together a masterful performance in his last showing, and he's going to be facing a Twins lineup that is not exactly packed with power. They do have Willens Astudillo, who is probably their most well-rounded hitter. He doesn't hit for power, he doesn't strike out, and he doesn't walk. So you know the ball's going to be in play whenever he is concerned here. Sorry, I'm going to look at the preliminary matchup. Interesting. He's not in this particular one, but we'll have to see where the utility man fits in. You have Nelson Cruz, of course, who should be hitting 3rd or 4th. He is down to being a DH only, but he does carry outfield eligibility. I think he's played in the field 7 games over the last 3 years, if I remember correctly. He was getting a little AL-NL run there when he was with the Mariners, but really doesn't have a glove anymore, as they say. Eddie Rosario is a solid cleanup hitter. He is batting from the left side of the plate. He is just a well-rounded hitter, 240 isolated power in his last 850 plate appearances against righties, and he has a very, very solid 860 OPS, which is, of course, on base plus slugging. And then your mileage may vary. CJ Cron, we like him better against lefties, but he should be batting 5th or 6th in this matchup. You've got the switch-hitting Marwin Gonzalez, and then Jonathan Scope, who, when he connects, can send the ball out of the park. It's all about connecting. Now, back to Tyson Ross here for a moment. Let's call up his game log here, because it was something that caught everybody off guard. His first in his first outing against New York in Yankee Stadium, he managed to go 5 innings, allowed 3 runs, 2 were earned, and he gave up 2 home runs, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. His next appearance was against Kansas City, and he was amazing. 7 innings, allowed 1 earned run, 6 total base runners, just 1 walk, and he had 8 strikeouts. So the truth probably for him lies somewhere in between. Just know that he has been injured multiple times over his career, and he is now 31. So he is no spring chicken, but this is an intriguing matchup for him. Let's continue on to our next matchup. You have the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim in the Windy City going against the Chicago Cubs. We do not have a run total yet because, of course, it is the Windy City. Currently, they're projecting between 10 and 14 mile an hour gusts of wind, or I guess that'd be closer to a breeze, heading out to right field. You have Chris Stratton, formerly of the San Francisco Giants, taking on Kyle Hendricks. This is another one where our mileage may vary. Now, let's see what's up with Mr. Mike Trout. Trout is not in the projected lineup. He has he will not likely play until Monday. He has strained groin, and they're going to look at it again on Sunday to determine if he needs a DL stint. That, of course, would be retroactive to April 9th, or if he's going to be shorter than, I guess, whatever the 4 or 5 remaining days are. If he's going to come back sooner, they may not put him on the DL just yet. But that means we're going to be looking at some less than impressive hitters from his teammates here. You've got Cole Calhoun, who after a stint in the minors, I think that was last year, he came back and has been hitting relatively solidly since then. Now, it's still not going to set the world afire, but he has at least shown a little bit more power and a little bit more consistency. So that's something that we want to consider here going against Kyle Hendricks. And then you're left with Andrelton Simmons. Jonathan Lucroy will probably bat 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Albert Pujols will slot in there in one or the other. And then I'm guessing Brian Goodwin, the journeyman outfielder who has been on multiple teams in his career, he gets the lefty-righty matchup there against Hendricks. He'll have a good batting spot going 5th there, but he's another guy, just does enough of everything. He's a better 4th or 5th outfielder. He did some time with the Nationals. I want to say, I think he was with Kansas City as well. So he's someone that pops up from time to time. Don't know that I'd want him to be my number 3 hitter. And then you've got Tommy La Stella, Zach Cozart, and David Fletcher rounding things out, plus the pitcher, Chris Stratton. So that means we're going to have some decision points with Kyle Hendricks because he is just 7,400 on DraftKings. Now, is he a reasonable SP2? Probably in this situation, and weird things happen from day to day, but we're looking at a lineup that's not going to have Mike Trout. And the biggest power hitters, I guess, arguably are Pujols, maybe Calhoun, maybe Jonathan Lucroy. And Lucroy is usually someone that you want batting 8th or 9th these days. So yikes, that means we're going to be given a long look here to Hendricks. Against lefties over his last 675 faced, he has a 3.99 xFIP, which is relatively solid, a 3.3 ERA, which means he has been a little bit lucky, but he's someone that generally outperforms his peripherals. However, he doesn't get the strikeouts that we like to see. He's got a 23% strikeout rate against lefties, and then he just has a 17.9% against righties, his last 750 righties. So that's nothing overly exciting there. But again, as an SP2 in this situation, I'm guessing that the Angels will probably have about a 3.7 to 3.9 implied run total. So that means he is going to be in play. On the other side, going against Chris Stratton, we have the excellent Chicago Cubs lineup that is starting to put things together. Stratton is a little bit of a mess, and him not being in San Francisco with that nice Oracle Park pitcher boost is going to be a little bit dicey. Now, he does, fortunately, at this point, get to go against Kyle Hendricks as a batter, so that's going to help him a little bit. Against his last 450 righties faced, he is allowing just under a 1 home run per 9. Of course, a lot of that probably has to do with Oracle Park, formerly AT&T Park, SBC Park, and Pac Bell. But he, going against lefties, a little bit more trouble there, allows 1.3 home runs per 9. He's going to be going against the switch hittings Ben Zobrist, who should be leading off. You've got Rizzo and Bryant and Javi Baez rounding out the heart of the lineup, along with Kyle Schwarber. And then we'll have to see what the mixing and matching is, but I would suspect we'll see Daniel Descalso and Jason Hayward, who can hit from the left side of the plate, somewhere in the bottom third of the order, and then we'll have to see who the catcher is going to be there. Heading on to our next game here, we've got the Snellevator. Blake Snell going against the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, Snell is going to be one of the most expensive pitcher, if not the most expensive pitcher, on every site for our 7-game early slate here, but he is well worth it in this matchup going against Toronto that has been a bit of a disappointment. Their underlying metrics are relatively solid, but their lineup is incredibly watered down from what we're used to seeing over the last couple seasons. And that's something I think we're going to all have to erase from our mind and just remember that these guys are like what the San Diego Padres have been 2, 3, and 4 years ago. Just not that fierce of a lineup. Likely we will see Freddie Galvis batting first or second. Teoscar Hernandez, Randall Grichuk, and Danny Jansen will be somewhere in the middle of the lineup. And then it'll be mix and match with utility guys, Richard Urena, Lourdes Gurriel, and then Alan Hansen, who came over from the Giants. If you need a super duper discount dandy, Billy McKinney, but I really don't want him in that lefty-lefty situation against Snell. Snell's clearly going to be our top option. In his last 220 lefties that he has faced, he has a 31% strikeout rate. And then against his last 1,100 righties, he's got a 27.3 strikeout rate. And he has allowed just 32 total home runs to righties in those 1,100 plate appearances. So he is definitely someone we want to consider. And if we need a little more, a little more incentive. He has put up 34 and 44 DraftKings points in his last 2 games. He has 11 and 13 strikeouts in those games. He has gone 13 innings. So goodness, he is about a 1.7 strikeout per inning at this point, and this is a phenomenal matchup for him. His 2 opponents he faced, he was in Chicago, and then Colorado came into Tampa Bay. So solid matchups in his favor. He's got another one today. Remember when he did start out against Houston on opening day, he did allow 3 home runs. So that was obviously a concern. In his 13 innings since then, he has just allowed 1. So that's someone we want to make a priority if we can. We also have Clay Buchholz, who will be making his first start. He has been dealing with an elbow injury, and he's no longer the guy that has a no-hitter to his name. He's on the downside of his career, and it is catch as catch can. If we knew he was going to go 6 or 7 innings, or at least have the potential to do so, we would want to give him at least a little bit of consideration here as our SP2 going against Tampa Bay. I'm just a little nervous because it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't even qualify for the win, meaning he goes somewhere in the 4 and change innings. We can look to Austin Meadows, Tommy Pham, Yi-Min Choi, Brandon Lowe. Yeah, they're not household names, but they have been respectable. And at least Choi and Lowe are relatively low priced. You also have Yandy Diaz, who does have some power when he can run into one. And then the rest of their lineup is a little bit dicey. But then again, we can say the exact same thing about Buchholz. Let's see, 2 more games to go here in our early look podcast. Again, reminder, 11:15, we will have the MLB early birds. I did that twice now. See, it's time for me to go to bed. It's the MLB DFS strategy show. That'll be over on the Osmo YouTube channel. It will be myself and Jake Hari, and we will go game by game through the entire slate. We'll focus more on the pitching. We'll know a little bit better what some of the projected lineups may be, and we may have some of the actual early game lineups for the 1 o'clock games. So that'll be something that we'll have a little more information to look at. And then, of course, as I did mention, we will have the 6 o'clock live before lock MLB show. You should see some content dropping for the NBA, which is starting at 2 o'clock on Saturday. There's a 4-game slate at 5 o'clock. They're kicking off a 3-game slate. So Fast Eddie Fear is going to have content out for that. We, of course, have projections for player projections, popularity for the players, what we expect their ownership percentage to be on various rosters, etc. So that's definitely something you want to check out. If you have not yet signed up, now is the time to do so. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD, all one word, and you can get 50% off any 1-month package. We also have a big MMA slate. We've got MMA ownership projections along with player projections for their scoring, which has been very helpful. That's something I've enjoyed. And then at 7 o'clock, we have NASCAR on Saturday night. They are, I believe, in Richmond, and we do have ownership for the drivers as well as projections there, and Osmo's rankings for all of the above, where he ranks guys based upon their potential production along with their salary price from a value perspective. The Colorado Rockies continuing their series, 3rd game in San Francisco. We know that the Rockies over the last 2 seasons have a weighted runs created plus of 87 both of those years, meaning they are producing 13% less runs when we account for ballpark factor than the rest of, or than the average team in the league. So last year that was good for 20th overall. 2 years ago, that same 87 was 3rd worst. So the Rockies, once they are outside of Coors Field, are definitely not the same, and we know that Oracle Park is the most pitching-friendly park. The Rockies are carrying a 3.3 implied run total going against Madsen Bumgarner, and then on the other side, we have the Giants with a 3.7 run total going against Kyle Freeland. Now, Bumgarner is not the same Bumgarner that we are used to seeing from his Cy Young contending years. He's still okay, but he carries a lot of name recognition, and he's carrying a pretty hefty price tag. He has made 3 starts thus far this season, going 7 on opening day in San Diego, and then following it up with a pair of 6-inning performances in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, and then at home against San Diego. He has, let's see, so that is, doing some math, 19 total innings. He has 16 strikeouts in that time. He has allowed 4 home runs, at least 1 in each game, and then 2 against San Diego. So again, he is not the same Madsen Bumgarner that we are used to seeing, but he has thrown 92, 95, and 93 pitches. So once you start to take that into account, he's definitely in play. This is a 4 o'clock game, so it is on the early slate, and there is also a midday slate. So he's someone that we're going to be looking at. I don't think we will be flocking towards him. On the other side, you have Kyle Freeland, who started off with 2 outstanding games. He was in Miami, racked up, 5 strikeouts in 7 innings, allowed 1 solo home run, 3 total base runners, got 25 DK points. He did get the win there. And then his next start was in Florida again. This time it was in Tampa Bay, and he had 10 strikeouts against the Marlins. Did not get the win, did not actually make it to qualify for the win, but he did throw 99 pitches, made it 4 2/3 innings, but you got to like those 10 strikeouts. 4 walks, a little concerning. And then he faced Atlanta in Colorado, so props to him. He did go 5 innings, but sadly, four base runners on walks, 7 hits, 7 earned runs. Again, he has done a nice job with 91, 99, and 93 pitches. So that's something that's good to see. And then we know that the Giants they have more righties in their lineup, but they're not very good. And that is going to have Freeland, someone that is worthy of our attention. So we're probably going to look at Buster Posey, Kevin Pillar, who's on a bit of a heater. Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt are both solid in lefty-lefty matchups, but you know what? We've been saying that for the last couple of years, which also means they're a couple years older. So this will be a bit of a tough one. Let's see if we can get a look at weather here. It is going to be 66 at first pitch. No winds, but remember, Oracle Park is built to withstand the winds that happen constantly down there next to the bay. So I think we're going to look at these pitchers. The pricing, we'll have some decision points. The hitters, your mileage may vary. If we're looking at the Rockies, then Arenado, Story, and probably Desmond are the guys we like. If we're looking over here at the Giants, as we mentioned, the amazingly frustrating Kevin Pillar, who is good and bad at the same time. You've got Tyler Austin, who does have some pop. He'll play a little bit in the outfield, depending on what they have with Brandon Belt and Buster Posey, working between outfield, catcher, and first base. And then Evan Longoria, still getting it done against lefties, but he should be batting sixth, maybe seventh in this lineup unless someone's out and he moves his way up to fifth. But he is 3,500 on DraftKings, so that is worth a call out there. Final game that we have on the early slate, and the other 4 o'clock game, is the Pittsburgh Pirates going against the Washington Nationals here. We had some rain on Friday night, but looks to be no precipitation whatsoever. About 80 degrees at first pitch, somewhere between 77 and 80. And this should be an intriguing one because we have Anibal Sanchez taking the mound here for the Washington Nationals. And Sanchez sort of reinvented his pitching style last season and was, I'm going to say it, was actually relevant. Thus far, he has allowed 7 runs in 9 2/3 innings. He went against Philadelphia both times. First game was in Nationals Park. He managed to go just 4 innings, 76 pitches. He did allow 4 earned runs, no home runs. His next game was in Citizens Bank Ballpark. He went 5 2/3 innings, but did allow 2 home runs, 3 total earned runs, got up to 6 strikeouts. He did go 83 pitches. We know that the Pittsburgh Pirates do not strike out a lot. They do project to strike out more than they have in the last couple of years, but it's still a little bit below league average. But if we're looking for a little bit of savings from our SP2, then it's definitely going to be Sanchez. Now, the last guy we've got to consider here is Chris Archer. He had a nice little respite after being suspended for 5 days, which really only pushed his start back 1 or 2 days, so he should be fine. We know that he is an enigma of sorts. You can get the Chris Archer that absolutely gets a boatload of strikeouts, or you can get the Chris Archer that gets his ass handed to him with walks and home runs. So this season had 2 decent starts against St. Louis. I believe it was the second or third game of the season there for the Pirates. He allowed just 2 hits across 5 innings, had 3 walks, but he did get 8 strikeouts on 99 pitches. And then he took on Cincinnati in the next game, had 7 strikeouts, 2 home runs, but just 3 runs allowed. He didn't go 100 pitches. So we know he's fully stretched out. The days off really should not affect him whatsoever. But he is going against the Washington Nationals, who are not the same Washington Nationals we've seen in the past. They've had some timely hitting that has helped them out in the win-loss column, but no more Bryce Harper. Trey Turner is on the shelf, and of course, Daniel Murphy on the shelf, but now in Colorado. So we'll look to Anthony Rendon, Juan Soto, and Ryan Zimmerman in the heart of the order. But outside of that, nobody's really exciting. You can look to Yan Gomes if you need a cheap catcher, depending on the site you're playing on. Adam Eaton, pesky, but a bit of an afterthought. And then you have Brian Dozier, who's okay against righties. We like him much more against lefties, but here he is with the Nationals, another year older. But the price tag does reflect the diminishing skill set. So that's what we'll have to work with. Again, we've got the 7 games here. We will talk about each one in depth on the DFS MLB strategy show at 11:15 on Saturday. And we will also go over just for fun, we'll hit that 6 o'clock game because we'll have some people on the all-day slate. And then we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 games on our main slate. Again, a little bit of potential rain there in Texas, so we'll have to see what happens with that. It had been a little warmer, approaching the mid-70s or so in Texas, but this game will be going off with about a 50 to 55 degree temperature at first pitch. So we have a lot to consume, a lot to figure out, but not to worry. We have a lot of information available at awesemo.com. Promo code EARLYBIRD, all one word, will get you 50% off any 1-month package, and that does include the Fantasy Cruncher add-on. And they've got some exciting new stuff, wink, wink, nod, nod, that's coming out that they're having us help beta test. So you'll definitely want to pay attention for that. And that's a nice deal they've worked out with us to give you guys a break to get in on the Fantasy Cruncher to try that first month, that's even better than what they have on their site, because they know that they work closely with us. They love our projections, and they know in the premium Slack chat we do a lot of education on how to utilize Fantasy Cruncher in addition to our YouTube videos. So with that, gamers, I'm going to get on out of here. You can follow me at EMACDFS as I approach 10,000 followers. Can't even believe it. Still remember when I hit 2,000, my wife and I had a good chuckle about that. Town I grew up in had 2,500 people. So to have nearly 4 times that following me on Twitter is a little bit fun. You can follow the Osmo account at Osmo_COM. We also have Osmo Odds. We have the Osmo MLB and Osmo NBA. So check those out as well, because we have some fun contests, questions, polls, and chances to win swag and other accoutrements out there. But with that, gamers, good luck.